Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
We are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
Today we're taking a look at Nimalia by Lucky Duck Games and Boîte.
Nimalia is a card-laying game in which you are going to be building habitats for different animals, trying to do your best to score amongst four different scorecards over the course of 5 rounds. This is a game in which you will be laying cards on top of other cards, overlapping things, trying to fit things into a 6x6 grid. Let's take a look at how it plays down below, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have Nimalia on the table. Let me show you guys how this card laying game is going to work, in which you are trying to match scoring objectives. So it's a pattern building game of sorts with these cards over here. For the components, what you have are mostly these cards, which are going to have grids on them, 4 squares, a 2x2 on each of these. And as you can see, there are different animals and habitats on each of these cards. This is an animal themed game, a zoological themed. And you also are going to have a score track made out of cards with score markers and a round tracker right here. You will use this ring that is double-sided, and you are going to slide it onto the next number to help you keep track of the round. This also tells you which of the score cards you are going to be using for that particular round to tell you how to score points. So for instance, in round 5, we're going to be using the blue one, the red one, and the yellow one. As you can see, these lines here. This ring here is double-sided, and it also tells you the round, but it also tells you which direction you are going to be passing your cards after you draft. So in rounds 1, 3, and 5, you pass your cards that you're not drafting to the player on your left. In rounds 2 and 4, you'll be passing them to the player on your right. So those are the components for this game. There are also these scorecards here that give you different objectives for what you're trying to achieve for each round. You're going to select 4 of these, a red one, a blue one, a yellow, and a green. And they're going to be for all different sorts of things. And the leaves here in the corners tell you how difficult that particular objective is. More leaves means a harder objective for you. These are double-sided. And the rulebook does explain what every one of these cards means. To give you an example, these 4 right here, they have the number 1 on them, and these are the ones that you are to play for your very first game. And this particular one here, you're going to get 2 points for each of the savanna regions on your board for your largest one, savanna being the yellow boxes here with the lion in them. You'll get 2 points for each one in your largest savanna. You're not going to score your smaller ones. Here's another example here. You'll get 3 points for every column that has 1 penguin, and exactly 1 penguin, because if you have more than 1, you're not going to get the 3 points for that. So you will select a yellow, blue, red, and green objective for you in this particular game, and you'll slot them in these different areas here, sliding the leaf portion underneath the section here that matches the color. And again, this is going to tell you which goals you're trying to work towards for that particular round. So in round 1, we put this marker here on the 1, and we would have our blue and green cards. You'll have all of your goal cards slotted in this, but I'm just going to show you blue and green here. And these are the 2 goals that you would be working towards in round 1. And then in round 2, it would go to green and yellow, and so on and so forth. And eventually you will come back to this one here as you would in round 3 and then again in round 5. So you don't want to just completely forget about these after you're done with round 1. They're still going to matter to you for future rounds. But the game does last 5 rounds. So let me show you how the game works. It will start with all players getting 3 of these cards dealt to them. And as I've already shown you, they're going to have different animals on them, different squares, and different arrangements. Some will have a river on them as well, and that's going to be important because some of the goals here are going to matter with the river, like how long the player who has the longest river, and you'll want your rivers to connect in some manner like that. Now, with the 3 cards that you have, you will select one of them to play face down in front of you, and this is going to be the one that you keep. You'll take your other 2 and you'll pass them in the direction for which you're supposed to pass for that particular round to the next player. After everybody's done that, they'll reveal the card that they kept for themselves, and you'll arrange this somewhere within a 6x6 grid in front of you. Now, 6x6 meaning these are 2, not 1. So this card right here takes up 4 spaces in your 6x6 grid. And so then with the 2 that are passed to you from the player to your left or right, depending on the round, you'll take a look at those, you'll repeat the same process, and you'll keep one of them and you'll pass the other to the player to your left or right, again going off of this token for the round, and then you'll flip over the one that you kept. Now, with this particular card, you're not allowed to just put it somewhere in your 6x6 grid. You have to cover up at least 1 square of something that's already in your 6x6 grid. So for instance, maybe I really wanted to connect those savanna regions, and I might do something like that because I'm covering up this blue water area with the flamingo and covering it up like so. And now I have built for myself a 4-region savanna. And then you will repeat the process again with the 1 card that's passed to you to end the round. You'll have to play this one somewhere into your 6x6 grid. And again, you have to cover up at least 1 square with this card. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could cover up all 4 squares if you wanted to do something like that, but you don't have to do that much. You just have to cover up at least 1. And so maybe I do something like that because I want to continue my river that I've got going on right here. And so that's the idea with this game. You are confined to that 6x6 grid. You cannot extend beyond that, but I'm not, just because I placed this first card right here does not mean that that's the center of my 6x6 grid. I could say this is the very edge right here, and it's going to extend 6 rows this way, or 6 columns this way, excuse me. Or vice versa, in any kind of way you want to think of it. But anyway, that's how a round works, and then you would score off of your goal cards for that particular round, the round 1 blue goal card. And then you would repeat the process for rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5, getting 3 cards and doing the same thing and scoring points along the way. You'll keep track of your points up here on the top, and if you pass 0, you will get the 50-point marker. If you go all the way around again, you can flip this over, and it's worth 100 points. And that's all there is to this game. Whoever has the most points is going to be the winner. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on Nimalia. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Nimalia from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, first impressions with this game, it's just cards. You have little score tokens as you move around the track, but otherwise this is just a card game. Yeah. I shouldn't say just a card game. There are only cards with this game. Yeah. What was your first impressions of seeing it?
It felt familiar. I feel like I've seen this idea kind of done before. Yeah. So I wasn't really sure if this was going to feel like a unique game or if it was going to feel like a repeat. Right.
Yeah. It does have very familiar components as well as mechanics with this, but I do think it's a unique kind of game with the idea of this 6x6 grid and usually filling up those kind of grids with tiles usually is like a polyomino game, right? Or a tiling in which the tiles are static. They don't change shape in any kind of way, like King Domino, for instance, right? But in this particular game, it's unique that you're overlapping squares with these cards, and in a sense, that sort of becomes like a polyomino with these cards being in different shapes. So it's a different kind of take on that filling up of a grid, that spatial element with that. So what did you think about that?
Yeah, I liked it because I really liked the scoring element of it, that you're only focusing on 2. Was it 2 at a time?
Yeah, two or 3, depending on the round.
Yeah. And so you can kind of, what you're doing in round 1, you have to kind of decide, okay, I can cover up some now, but then it might come back in round 4 that you need that element again. Right. And so you have to kind of look ahead a little bit, but you can alter it. You can put cards on top of cards. And so I think that's what makes this game different from anything else.
Excuse me. Yeah, you have to cover up something every time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the restriction, the constricting factor in this game that makes it challenging, is that you have to cover up something, and a lot of times there's something you know what you want to cover up,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't need the polar bears, cover up the polar bears,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But then you have to still stay in that 6x6 grid, and then other times it's like, I don't want to change it. I need everything.
But then you have to kind of decide, because some elements are just going to get you more points than others.
Right.
And I think that's where I won this game, and I think I did a little bit better than Lance, because it's figuring that part out. That yes, the penguins they don't seem super important, but they actually give you a lot of points.
Yeah, they'll give you more points in the long run.
But the river, having a 3-part river or 4-part river, isn't going to probably change the outcome of the game. So just kind of figuring out which ones you really need to focus on.
Yeah,
and they're harder and they're easier to do.
And then there are some that only one player can score off of, or if you're playing with lots of players, then it's the person who's the highest gets the most, and then second gets a smaller bonus, but it's not something that everybody gets to score off of. So you really have to weigh out those scorecards, which does make the game interesting.
Yeah.
I sort of felt like this game was a cross between King Domino and Cartographers, because King Domino, you've got the grid, you've got the tiles, you're laying them in certain spots, and you want to maximize building up those regions a lot of times. But then Cartographers, you've got the different goals that you're trying to achieve that fire off on different rounds. I mean, I feel like that's a good example of what this game is, a cross between those two things. And I love both of those games. And so when you throw them together in this, I feel like this game really worked well.
Yeah.
It's a smaller kind of experience, if that makes sense, because it's just a very quick, straight, and easy. The box says, what does it take? 20 minutes? 30 minutes? I don't know if it even takes 30 minutes, quite honestly.
I think it could, depending on how long you take to make decisions.
Perhaps, if you're playing 4 players with people who maybe are a little AP.
But I want to put this in our travel box.
Yes, because the size of this box is a plus for it, 100%. Yeah, it's small, it's compact, and it doesn't take up a whole lot of space, table space, getting it out. So you can definitely travel with this one for sure. All right, with that, let's get to our pros and cons for this one. So you've already heard us say some of the pros on it, but Sam, what for you stands out for making this game a pro for non-gamers?
I just really like the scoring aspect of it. I think that you're not having to focus all your energy on everything, and you know when you need to focus on each one, which I think is important. It's not one of those things where you draw a card and you're like, oh, now we're focusing on
Caught by surprise.
You can think ahead, but you don't have to. And I think that's good for developing gamers, I guess, and like strategy.
Yeah.
I think it gives enough for a gamer
Absolutely.
as far as strategy goes, but it's simple enough for a non-gamer.
Okay. Yeah. I like the look of it. I like the artwork, and I don't typically like these blending of different colored squares to form the game board. That kind of, I don't know, visually gives me a headache sometimes, but with this one, it works for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because the squares are necessary in covering them up, but for me, the game looks nice on the table, so that's a plus. Any other pros for you?
I mean, there's hardly any setup at all.
Yeah.
And it's simple to understand and quick to play. So.
Yeah, and it's got familiar mechanics that we really enjoy.
Yeah.
The spatial element filling up the grid is sort of like tiling, so that's a good thing too. Any cons with this particular game?
I mean, honestly, not any that really come straight to mind. I could see it being a little too simple for some gamers.
Perhaps.
Overall, there's not enough there to come up with a con.
I think for me, maybe one con might simply be that you're gonna experience the frustration factor with this game. We've talked about this before in other games, that there seems to be a point with games of this ilk where you're building up towards goals, but you're at the same time constricting the space and losing more and more freedom, if that makes sense. That there's going to come that point where you're not going to hit the goals that you wanted to hit. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for a lot of people who play board games, but it will be a bad thing for some people.
Yeah.
And some people will play this game and they'll experience that heartbreak of not reaching the goals that they wanted to with what they were creating, and it might just taint the whole experience, if that makes sense. Now, so I think that's more of just knowing the person that you're playing this game with, but that is a factor with this game that's just built into the game, that you're not going to hit all the goals you want to hit with this one. So, all right, scale of 1 to 10, love to hate for Nimalia. Where does this one come in at for you?
I really like this game, and it's one I would definitely play again. I think at least 2 of our children could probably play with us, which is another pro for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably give it a 7.8.
Okay. Yeah, very favorable score here for this one. I think for me, it's a good game. It's one that I definitely want to keep playing, and like Sam said, bring it out onto on a vacation, a road trip, that sort of thing, because again, it's easy to throw in a bag and doesn't take up a whole lot of space to play and set up. So I want to experience more from it. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 7.5, because I think this game has a lot to offer with the different scoring cards and different challenges that throws at you, and mixing and matching them. There are scoring cards that are easier and some that are harder, as denoted by the leaves that I showed you there in the rules portion of the video. So I do think this game has some legs to it to explore and see how far it goes. So 7.5 for me, 7.8 for Sam. That is Nimalia. It is from Lucky Duck Games and La Boîte de Jeux. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.